You've rehearsed the conversation in your head all morning, and it still goes wrong in the first 10 seconds. You're standing in a tiny meeting room, holding your notebook like a shield, trying to tell one of your best people that the work is slipping. You start with a compliment, then another, then a soft hint, then a softer hint. The other person smiles, says, "Got it," and walks out. Nothing's changed, and you haven't protected their future. That moment is the heart of Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and it is one of the clearest playbooks for saying what needs to be said without turning into a jerk. You are going to learn how to care personally and challenge directly at the same time, how to give praise that actually lands, how to deliver criticism that people can use, how to build trust in one-on-ones, how to avoid the silent killers of teams, and how to drive results without fear. This covers every major part of the book, so by the end, you'll have the full picture. Most people think they are being professional when they are really just avoiding clarity. Radical candor is not a personality. It is not being blunt. It is not being nice. It is a relationship strategy that shows up in what you say, when you say it, and why you say it. Kim Scott explains it with two axes. One axis is care personally. That means you actually give a damn about the person as a human being, not as a resource. The other axis is challenge directly. That means you tell the truth clearly, even when it is uncomfortable. When you do both, you get radical candor. When you miss either one, you fall into one of three traps. And the traps are sneaky, because they can look like good management. Think of it like driving at night with a dirty windshield. You still see lights, you still see shapes, you think you are fine, and you do not realize how close you are to the guardrail. So, let's clean the windshield, because this one framework can change how you lead, how you work, and how you communicate with everyone you care about. The first trap is ruinous empathy. That is high care, low challenge. You want to be kind, you want to protect people, you avoid saying the hard thing because you do not want to hurt them, and it can quietly sabotage someone's growth. The second trap is obnoxious aggression. That is high challenge, low care. This is the person who prides himself on brutal honesty. The feedback might be true, but it lands like a slap. People do not feel helped, or they feel attacked. The third trap is manipulative insincerity. That is low care, low challenge. It is politics. It is smiling to someone's face and complaining behind their back. It is vague praise, vague criticism, and relationships that feel slippery. If you have ever worked on a team where everyone is nice but nothing gets solved, you have seen ruinous empathy. If you have ever worked under someone who tells it like it is, and you dread every interaction, you have seen obnoxious aggression. You have seen manipulative insincerity. That is why the book starts with relationships. You cannot lead people you do not know. Not know in a spreadsheet way. Know in a human way. Caring personally does not mean becoming someone's therapist. It means showing basic human respect in a consistent way. You listen. You remember details. You follow up. You treat the person as more than their output. Here's a simple test. If your direct report disappeared tomorrow, would you know what they are proud of, what they are struggling with, and what they want next? Your feedback will always feel heavier than it needs to. Now, caring personally is not enough on its own. This is where guidance comes in. Kim Scott uses the word guidance to cover both praise and criticism because both are information and both shape behavior. Most managers do guidance backward. They wait. They store up frustration. They deliver feedback weeks later when the moment is gone. They treat guidance like a formal event. And then they wonder why people feel blindsided. Delayed feedback is like trying to steer a car by looking in the rearview mirror. You are always reacting late. Radical candor pushes you toward guidance that is frequent, specific, and normal. Praise should not be a generic good job. It should be specific enough that the person can repeat the behavior. Criticism should not be a vague, "this isn't working." It should be clear enough that the person can adjust. Or it turns into a lecture disguised as leadership. This is where the get part becomes critical. You have to solicit feedback about your own leadership. Most leaders accidentally train their teams to stay quiet. They punish criticism without realizing it. They get defensive. They explain. They justify. They argue. So people learned the safest move is to smile and say, all good. That is how mediocre culture is born. Sam tried a small experiment after reading this. At the end of every one-on-one, he asked one question. What's one thing I could do or stop doing that would make your work easier? The first time he asked, the other person froze and said, nothing, it's fine. Sam felt the urge to rescue the moment. He did not. He waited. The other person finally said, when you change priorities midweek, it makes me feel like I failed. Sam's stomach tightened. He wanted to defend himself. He wanted to explain why priorities had to shift. Instead, he said, that makes sense. Thank you for telling me. Then he changed one thing. He gave earlier notice. He explained the trade-off. He stopped acting like chaos was normal. The next week, the feedback came faster. By week 2, Sam had more useful truth than he had gotten in the previous 6 months. That is what rewarding criticism looks like. Not a trophy, not a speech, and real adjustment. Be honest. When someone criticizes you, do you get curious? Or do you get defensive? Or silence? Now the book moves into motivation, and this is where a lot of managers accidentally break good people. People do not change because you are correct. People change because the change connects to something they care about. Kim Scott pushes leaders to understand what motivates each person, instead of assuming everyone wants the same ladder. Sam made this mistake with Jordan. Jordan was excellent at execution. That Jordan could take a messy situation and turn it into a clean plan. Sam assumed Jordan wanted a promotion into people management, because that is what success looks like on paper. So Sam started giving Jordan leadership opportunities. Jordan started slipping. Meetings got awkward, decisions got slow. Jordan looked drained. Finally, Jordan said, I don't want to manage people, I want to build systems. Sam realized he had been developing Jordan into a life Jordan did not want. That was not care, that was projection. So Sam changed the plan. He gave Jordan ownership of a process redesign. Jordan lit up. The work sharpened. The energy came back. Superstars and rock stars. Some people want rapid growth and big challenges. They thrive on change. Some people are steady and essential. They create stability. They do not necessarily want constant promotion. Both are valuable. The mistake is treating rock stars like people who lack ambition. That is disrespect. A rock star might be the person who holds the team together during chaos. A rock star might be the quiet mentor. A rock star might be the quality gate that prevents disasters. Think of it like a band. Not everyone needs to be the lead singer. If you fire your drummer because he does not want to sing, your music collapses. So the job is not to force everyone into the same shape. The job is to align roles with strengths and goals. Now we step into execution, because radical candor is not only about feedback, it is also about how you get results without turning into a controlling mess. A lot of managers think leadership means having the answers. So they tell people what to do, they solve problems alone, they make decisions in private, until it stops working. Because people do not commit to what they do not understand. And teams do not innovate when they are being micromanaged. Driving results collaboratively means you create clarity, you create debate, you make decisions, and then you execute together. Sam had a painful moment with this. His team was behind on a project. Sam panicked. He started assigning tasks like a dispatcher. He stayed late, rewriting plans, sending messages, just do this, just do that. But everyone's energy dropped. After the deadline, one of his best people told him, I didn't feel like a teammate. I felt like a pair of hands. Sam realized he had traded long-term trust for short-term control. So the next time they hit a hard problem, Sam tried a different approach. He asked the team to map the problem. He asked what they were seeing. He asked what constraints were real. He asked what trade-offs they were willing to make. They argued. It was messy. It was slower at first. The plan got better than Sam's solo plan, and the team owned it. People pushed through obstacles without being chased because they had helped build the path. That is the difference between compliance and commitment. Now, the book gets very practical about one-on-ones, guidance, team health, and performance. So let's walk through the core tools. A one-on-one is not a status meeting. It is not your meeting. It is their meeting. It is the place where you build the relationship that makes radical candor possible. If you only talk about tasks, you will eventually hit the same wall. You will need someone to hear hard feedback, and they will not trust your intent. Sam changed his one-on-ones in a simple way. He stopped starting with his agenda. He started with, "What's on your mind?" At first, people tested him with small issues. A meeting was annoying, a process was unclear. Sam did not dismiss them. He treated small issues like signals, not complaints. Over time, the issues got more real. A conflict with a teammate, a fear about performance, a personal challenge that affected work. Sam did not fix everything. He did not try to be a hero. He stayed present and consistent. That consistency is caring, personally in action, and it leads directly into guidance. Praise is easy to do badly because generic praise is cheap. Great job feels nice, but it teaches nothing. Specific praise teaches excellence. The way you summarize the customer issue in 2 sentences saved the meeting. Now the person knows what to repeat or explode. Kim Scott's approach is kind and clear. Kind means the person feels you are on their side. Clear means they know exactly what needs to change. Criticism is not a character attack. It is not a rant. It is not a vague cloud of disappointment. Criticism is an offer. It is information that helps someone do better. A good way to think of it is like a GPS recalculating. It is not mad at you. It is not judging you. It is just telling you, that turn did not get us closer. Try this instead. Sam had to practice this with Leo. Leo was friendly and hardworking, but he started missing small deadlines. Nothing catastrophic, just little slips that created hidden stress. Sam avoided it because he did not want to make it awkward, dressed up as kindness. Then the slips got bigger and the team had to scramble. Sam finally sat down with Leo and said, "I want you to succeed here, and I'm worried. Over the last few weeks, 3 deliverables slipped past the deadline, and it created extra pressure on the team. What's going on, and what do you need to get back on track?" Leo looked relieved. He said, I've been confused about priorities, and I've been afraid to ask because everyone seems busy." Sam realized the problem was not laziness. The problem was lack of clarity and lack of safety. They clarified priorities, they set check-ins, the deadlines recovered, and the relationship got stronger, not weaker. That is what happens when you challenge directly with care. Now, radical candor cannot be only top-down. A healthy team needs peer-to-peer guidance too, because toxicity grows when people complain sideways instead of speaking directly. Toxic stew. Toxic stew is what happens when you let small resentment simmer. A sarcastic comment in a meeting, a private complaint after a decision, a pattern of exclusion, so nobody confronts it. Then one day, the culture tastes bitter, and nobody can name why. Radical candor is the antidote because it surfaces issues early, while they are still fixable. Here's another engagement moment for you. Which trap do you fall into under stress? Do you go silent and nice, which becomes ruinous empathy? Do you go sharp and blunt, which becomes obnoxious aggression? Or do you go political, which becomes manipulative insincerity? You choose it with fear. Now let's talk about performance, because this is where managers either avoid reality or overreact to reality. Kim Scott makes a point that sounds harsh until you sit with it. Keeping someone in a role where they cannot succeed can quietly destroy their confidence. Sometimes the most caring move is to be honest that the fit is wrong. Sam faced this with Priya. Priya was smart and enthusiastic, but the role required careful detail and her work kept coming back with avoidable mistakes. Sam kept rewriting her work late at night. He kept protecting her from consequences. He told himself, she will grow into it. But the stress kept building and Priya's anxiety kept rising. Sam finally did the hard thing. He gave clear feedback early with examples. He offered support. He set expectations. He coached, then slipped again. Sam realized the role did not fit her strengths. He helped her find a better internal path, but the specific role had to be filled by someone who loved detail. When Sam made the change, the team's stress dropped. And Priya's stress dropped too because she was not living inside constant correction. That is not cruelty, that is clarity. Now, execution. Kim Scott breaks collaboration into stages, and this is one of the most useful pieces in the whole book because teams get stuck when they skip stages. They jump to execution without debate, so people disagree silently. They debate forever without deciding, so momentum dies. They decide without persuading, so commitment is weak. They execute without learning, so mistakes repeat. Good leadership creates a rhythm where the team knows what stage they are in and what is required. Sam used to suffer from meeting creep. Every problem became another meeting. Every meeting created follow-up meetings. His calendar became a swamp. He tried one simple rule. Before scheduling anything, he asked, are we clarifying, debating, deciding, persuading, executing, or learning? If the goal was clarity, the conversation had to end with clarity. If the goal was decision, it had to end with a decision and an owner. If the goal was learning, it had to end with what would change next time. This cut pointless meetings fast because it exposed meetings that had no purpose. And when meetings had purpose, they got shorter. Clarity is a form of care. When people do not know what is expected, they burn energy guessing. When people do not know why a decision was made, they invent stories. When people do not know what success looks like, they fear feedback. Now let's talk about performance reviews because Kim Scott's point is simple and powerful. Performance reviews fail when they become a once-a-year surprise attack. Radical candor turns performance into a continuous conversation, so the review becomes a summary, not a shock. Evaluation is not meant to punish. It is meant to create honesty about results, growth, and fit. When guidance is frequent, specific, and kind, performance discussions become calmer, clearer, and more fair. Because you need a way to start. Radical candor does not require you to become a new person overnight, especially when you feel awkward. That awkwardness is a good sign. It means you are leaving the old habit of hiding. Here are the moves you can start this week, and they are simple on purpose. First, pick one question to solicit feedback and use it consistently. What's one thing I could do or stop doing that would make your work easier? Works because it invites honesty without forcing drama. Then remember, the real test is your reaction. If you get defensive, you teach silence. If you get curious, you teach truth. You do not have to agree with everything you hear, but you do have to reward the courage it took to say it. Second, practice guidance in the moment with one sentence that is specific. When something goes well, tell the person what they did that worked and why it mattered. When something goes wrong, say what happened, the impact, and what you need next time. That structure keeps you out of character attacks and keeps the feedback usable. It also makes it easier for you to be direct without sounding cruel, because you are talking about behavior and impact, not identity. Third, protect one-on-ones from becoming status meetings. You can still talk about projects, but you must leave room for the person. Ask what is hard, ask what is unclear, ask what they want more of, ask what they want less of. Then follow up next time. Trust grows from small loops that close. If you listen and do nothing, people stop sharing. If you listen and adjust even a little, people lean in. Fourth, hold one growth conversation every month that is about their future, not your staffing plan. Ask what kind of work energizes them. Ask what skill they want to build next. Ask what they want their story to be a year from now. Then find one small project or responsibility that points in that direction. People do not burn out only from hard work. People burn out from work that feels pointless. When growth becomes visible, energy returns. If you do these 4 things, you will mess it up sometimes. And that is normal. It is like learning a new language. You will overcorrect, you will hesitate, you will say the sentence in a weird way. Do it anyway. And because the cost of avoiding these conversations is not comfort. The cost is slow decay. The reward is trust that shows up when it matters. Sam noticed this shift about a month after he committed to the practice. He was walking out of a meeting when a teammate said, "Hey, Sam, quick thing. When you answered that question for me, it made it seem like I hadn't prepared. Next time, can you let me take it first?" Old Sam would have felt embarrassed. Old Sam would have defended himself. Instead, Sam said, "You're right, I jumped in. Thank you for telling me." And the teammate smiled. No drama, no resentment, no stew, and adjustment. That is the promise of radical candor. That is it for this video. I hope it was useful and gave you something real to think about. Thanks for watching and have a great day.